The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the low hum of dozens of alien species murmuring among themselves. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and exotic pheromones, the byproduct of species adapted to wildly different worlds. At the center of it all, standing atop the elevated dais, the Supreme Speaker raised a clawed hand, signaling for silence. The murmurs faded instantly. He gazed across the assembly, his bioluminescent eyes flickering in calculated amusement. Today, we recognize the induction of a new species into our esteemed galactic community. His voice, though artificially translated, carried an unmistakable tone of condescension. A holographic image materialized behind him, displaying a slowly rotating Earth. Humanity. A young race, one that has only recently achieved interstellar travel. Though ambitious, it is clear that they, like all species in their infancy, lack the proper understanding of war's burden. Several alien dignitaries exchanged knowing glances. The Zeldar warlord let out a low, guttural chuckle. The Zinari diplomat adjusted his intricate robes, nodding in quiet agreement. The Supreme Speaker continued, his voice taking on a rehearsed diplomatic cadence. We acknowledge Earth's desire for peace, but history has shown that such desires often stem from fear. Fear of conflict. Fear of destruction. He paused, letting his words settle. Humanity is fragile. It fears war and would not survive a prolonged galactic conflict. This council, therefore, advises Earth to place its trust in those who have carried the burden of war for eons. To rely on those who understand its necessity. A murmur of approval rippled through the chamber. The Zeldar representative, his armored form gleaming under the chamber's dim lights, leaned forward, his mandibles clicking in amusement. Let us be honest, he said, his deep voice barely concealing his amusement. Humans are soft creatures. They lack the constitution for war. Their survival depends on the mercy of stronger civilizations. The Zinari diplomat nodded sagely. Indeed. They have fought among themselves, yes, but only in primitive skirmishes. Their wars are nothing more than the brawls of an undisciplined species. They do not understand true warfare. The Supreme Speaker lifted a hand once more, silencing the murmurs again. And so, it is the decision of this council that humanity, while welcomed, shall remain under the protection of the greater galactic powers. A ward of sorts, until such time as they prove themselves capable of standing on their own. Silence. A carefully orchestrated moment of pause, giving the weight of the statement time to settle. Then, a voice, calm, measured, yet carrying an unmistakable edge. You think we fear war? The words cut through the chamber like a blade. The Supreme Speaker's bioluminescent eyes flickered slightly, his first sign of hesitation. The other delegates turned in unison, their attention drawn to the human representative who had been silent until now. Ambassador Dorian Kane stood at his podium, his expression unreadable. He was not a large man, nor did he wear the elaborate garments of his alien counterparts. A simple Earth-standard diplomatic suit, dark and unassuming. Yet, there was something about him, something in the way he held himself, that made even the Zeldar warrior pause. Kane exhaled slowly, his fingers tapping once against the metal podium. His voice, when he spoke again, was quiet. Controlled. You misunderstand us completely. He stepped forward, placing both hands on the podium. We do not fear war. A beat passed. We are war. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. Some delegates shifted in their seats, others narrowed their eyes, waiting for clarification. Kane let the silence stretch, watching them, weighing them, before continuing. You sit here and speak of war as though it is some ancient burden only you understand. You call us fragile, call us afraid, because we seek peace. But let me ask you, do you know what war truly is? His voice was calm, yet there was an unmistakable edge to it, something sharpened by history, by experience, by knowledge none of them possessed. You speak of war as if it is a noble duty, as if it is something your species have mastered through eons of careful refinement. His gaze swept over them, sharp and assessing. But you have never fought wars like ours. A murmur rippled through the delegates, but none interrupted him. Our wars do not start because we wish to expand. They do not start because we seek glory. They start because we refuse to kneel. We fight when we are cornered, when our backs are against the wall, when survival is no longer a choice but a necessity. He leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering just enough to make the room feel smaller, more intimate. And when that happens, we do not stop. The Zeldar warlord, who had previously mocked humanity, now watched Kane with something different in his gaze. Something almost like recognition. Kane's hands curled into fists against the podium. You believe our wars are simple, that our history is nothing more than the primitive struggles of an undeveloped race. But let me tell you about Earth's history. Let me tell you what war looks like when humans wage it. He exhaled, slow and measured. We have fought wars where the sky itself burned. We have fought wars where entire cities vanished in the blink of an eye. We have fought wars where the battlefield was not land, but ideology, where the only weapons were fear and patience, and the battle lasted generations. We have fought wars where we were outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded, and still, we refused to break. The chamber had fallen utterly silent. Kane's voice did not rise, but there was something in it now, something unshakable. Do you know what happens when you back a human into a corner? He let the question hang for a moment before answering it himself. We do not surrender. We do not bow. We adapt. We endure. And then, we make sure it never happens again. A flicker of hesitation crossed the Supreme Speaker's face. The certainty he had spoken with earlier was now gone, replaced by something else. Doubt. Kane took a slow step back from the podium, his gaze sweeping over the assembly. You think we fear war? His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. No. We simply understand it better than you ever will. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Kane let them sit in it, let the weight of his words settle. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the Zeldar warlord, who had mocked humanity moments ago, was staring at him with something that almost looked like respect. You assume that because we seek peace, we fear war. Kane's voice was quieter now, but no less dangerous. That is your mistake. The Zinari diplomat shifted uncomfortably, his fingers twitching against the fabric of his robes. Are you saying humanity is warlike by nature? Kane's gaze snapped to him, sharp as a blade. No. I'm saying we understand it. We know it better than you. We mastered it before we ever left our planet. He let the words hang, watching the realization flicker across their faces. We know when to fight, and more importantly, when not to. The Supreme Speaker's bioluminescent eyes dimmed slightly. And yet you claim to seek peace. Kane tilted his head slightly. Of course we do. Any species that truly understands war, what it costs, what it does, would be fools not to seek peace first. He exhaled, slow and deliberate. But peace is not given. It is kept. And we know how to keep it. The warlord's mandibles clicked. Through strength. A flicker of amusement passed over Kane's face. Through understanding. Strength is just one part of it. He gestured broadly. You all sit here in this council chamber because, at some point, your species fought wars that shaped you. You learned how to fight. But humanity? We learned how to win. A murmur rippled through the delegates, but no one interrupted. We win before the first shot is fired, Kane continued. We study. We adapt. We prepare. And when war does come, we do not fight fair. We do not fight clean. We fight to end it, as fast and as decisively as possible. His voice dropped lower. You look at our history and see chaos. We look at it and see something else. A blueprint. A lesson. The Supreme Speaker shifted, something unreadable in his expression. And what lesson is that? Kane's eyes locked onto his. That war is not about weapons. It is about minds. It is about knowing your enemy before they know you. About making sure that, by the time they realize what you are capable of, it is already too late. No one spoke. Even the Zinari diplomat, who had been so quick to judge humanity before, looked shaken. Kane exhaled, stepping back slightly. You wanted to know if we fear war. His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. No. We don't fear war. We make others fear starting one with us. No one spoke. The weight of Kane's words settled over the chamber like a storm waiting to break. The Supreme Speaker, once so certain in his pronouncement, now sat in measured silence, his bioluminescent gaze flickering with something unspoken. The Zeldar warlord was no longer laughing. Instead, he studied Kane with the quiet intensity of a predator recognizing another. The Zinari diplomat, once condescending, now looked shaken, the careful calculations in his mind unraveling with each second that passed. Kane let them sit in their discomfort. Let them understand. Finally, the Supreme Speaker's voice broke the silence, quieter now, measured in a way it had not been before. It appears we have misjudged humanity. Kane's expression remained unchanged. Yes. The warlord exhaled slowly, mandibles clicking in thought. And if war were to come to your people? Kane tilted his head slightly, his voice unwavering. Then it would be the last war fought against us. The Zinari diplomat swallowed hard. You are asking us to see humanity as a threat. Kane shook his head. No. I am asking you to see us as you should have from the beginning. Not as fragile. Not as fearful. But as something far more dangerous. His gaze swept across the room. A species that understands war and chooses, time and time again, to avoid it, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. A species that values peace because it knows exactly what happens when it is taken away. The Supreme Speaker regarded him carefully, then inclined his head. Then let it be known, the Council acknowledges its error. Humanity is not a ward. It is an equal. A shift passed through the chamber. The Zeldar warlord gave a slow, approving nod. The Zinari diplomat looked away, deep in thought. The murmurs that followed were not of condescension, nor of dismissal, but of quiet respect. Kane said nothing. He didn't need to. He turned, walking toward the chamber doors, leaving behind only silence. But before stepping through, he paused, glancing back just once. His voice, when he spoke, was calm. Unshaken. Final. You thought we feared war. A pause. A breath. Now you know the truth. Then, he was gone. And in the silence he left behind, one unspoken truth settled over the council like a shadow. Humanity didn't fear war. War feared humanity.